Hello everyone, good morning. It's time to get started. We've been anticipating our guest speaker this morning for quite some time. We're excited that Mike is here and to share some good news about our mission work in Africa. A little bit about Michael. Mike Napier has served as a minister for churches in Illinois, Tennessee, New Jersey, Missouri, and Arkansas. He's also been active in camp work, radio evangelism, day school ministry, campaigns, gospel meetings, youth rallies, various evangelism training, missions, and Christian counseling. Mike and his wife, Diane, have two sons, Chad and Nathan. Chad is the youth minister for the Hot Springs Village Church of Christ in Hot Springs Village, Arkansas. He and his wife Janet have two children, Mark and Bailey. And yeah, amen. And then Nathan, his other son, is his wife Carrie. They also have two children, two sons, Caden and Jude. Since November 2001, Michael and Diane have worked with the North Side Church of Christ in Benton, Arkansas, where he serves as mission and education director and involvement minister. For the last 4 years at Northside's been overseeing the Gospel Chariot missions, and that's what we're going to hear from today. Mike and the Northside Church have been working with George Funk for the last 11 years, so he's going to present. I'll introduce Mike now. He's going to present the work there in Africa. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Steve. It's great to be here. I was here a few years ago, but I probably remembered you better than you remember me. But it was a very good trip, and we're so grateful. And the first thing I want to say is George wanted me to say is thank you for your support. He appreciates it more than you know. And you're supporting a work that is a very unusual work among churches of Christ. It is a work that is about a country and not just, it's about a continent and not just a country. I'll get that right. We're going currently into 11 African countries. And so far, this is what God has been doing through the gospel and with the gospel chariot. These numbers are a little low now because it's been a few months since I made this. We've had over 12,000 baptisms on the chariots. We've distributed 3 million World Bible School courses or more, helped establish hundreds of congregations, given out hundreds of thousands of Bibles, and trained hundreds in short-term schools in Africa. And beyond that, every year, as these two big old trucks that we built go through these 11 countries, hundreds of thousands of people come under the sound of the gospel. Now, our responsibility is not to predict the results, it's to give them the opportunity to make a choice. And so, next slide, please, Steve. We have two trucks. The one in the back is the original truck. It's a little bigger, but if you looked at that road on the first slide, that was in Zambia. And those roads are tough, and so we learned how to build them a little tougher with the second truck. The first truck, we're getting ready to replace the body. A brother in Texas volunteered to help us do that, and so we'll take the body off, and it's had some damage to it, and we'll take that body, and we're going to take it, Steve, to Plattenburg Bay, where George now is, and he's established a congregation there. There's no classroom for the children, so we'll take that body and we'll turn it into classrooms for the children in Plattenburg Bay. And so we don't waste anything. George doesn't waste anything. Next, please. Those are the 12 countries, 11 countries that we go into. If you start down at the very tip in Cape Town, South Africa, the southernmost point, and go all the way up to Angola, and then to the east and the north up to Kenya, and then down, and everything in between, the chariots are running there 11 months out of every year. We bring them in January to do repairs. A brother out of Texas flies out there, a master mechanic, and he helps us get him ready for the coming year. But one of the things we're really excited about, and we'll show a DVD from George in just a little bit, is that, Lord willing, we hope to build the third chariot for Northwest Africa. So you see that chariot up there in Ghana, and then just fill in the gaps for a lot of those countries. If we can build this third truck, you can see all the countries that it'll go into. And we really are getting very close to covering the continent of Africa. And that's, of course, our goal with the gospel. There's 1 billion people on the continent of Africa. And so we're chipping away at getting into those areas. Next, please. Now, this has nothing to do with anything, but I just like this tree. It's the oldest tree in Africa. And they say that it was around, it was in existence when Jesus walked the earth. And so I love that big tree. So I put it in there because I like to see it. Next. So a chariot comes in, and there we are. We got the big tent laying on the ground, and some of the people in that area are helping us wash it because it gets pretty grimy on those highways and byways throughout these countries in Africa. Next, please. Once we get the truck up, this is how it looks. I just returned from Malawi, and I'll talk more about that. Did any of you ever see the movie Field of Dreams, baseball movie? If you build it, they will come. Well, here's what we've learned. And I've been with a chariot at least 20 times in 20 different campaigns. If you put it up, they will come. And the chariot will hold 300 comfortably. We carry chairs for about 300 people. But you can see there was way more than 300. In Malawi one night, there was 600 and some that showed up under the tent to hear the good news. Next, please. And that's just another showing what it looks like under the tent. Next, please. Now, I need to explain, in case you've never seen this, our chariot is divided, of course, into thirds. First part's where the driver is, and then there's a little storage area where we keep the tents and the Bibles and the correspondence courses. The next area, then, there is a built-in baptistry. And if you've been on very many mission trips, you know how spectacular it is to have that there, right there with you. And then in the very back, there's room for 4 national preachers to sleep in the little kitchenette, and as they travel with the chariot throughout their countries. And then we hook this big tent, and we do a lot of work with the children. Next slide, please. Because half of the population of Africa is 16 years of age or younger. And although you'll look at some of these and think they're very young, often they are a lot older than you think they are. They may look 10 and they may well be 13 or 14 or 15. Sometimes we don't put the tent down because we're just passing through. We have a couple of World Bible School contacts there, or somebody's asked us, or the churches in that area have asked us to go to a particular area. So we just put down the side of the truck and put out the chairs and just preach and hand out Bible correspondence courses and give them an opportunity to hear the good news. And as courses come in from there, we'll know that's an area where we need to go and have a campaign. Next. Sometimes they come in the rain. Not as many, but there they sit. Next. Here again, just out in a rural area, going to the highways and the byways, compelling them to come in. Next, please. In Africa, in Namibia, it's kind of this way, but not quite. In Namibia, I was there in June, the women sat on the right-hand side and the men sat on the left-hand side, and the children sat on the ground. And so I asked them if they were some kind of Bible thing they were trying to reflect, and because we needed to talk a little bit. They said, no, it's just how our culture chooses to do it. And so, but they'll sit there. They don't like sermonettes, I can promise you. They want to hear a full-length sermon. Next, please. And sometimes what we'll do, this is a group I led into Namibia, and during the day we'll set up the tent and we'll have Bible studies. And so the team just studies all day long, and they come under the tent and we set up appointments. And this was in Namibia. There was no congregations in Namibia, as far as we know, among the Lord's church in Namibia when George first took the chariot into there. Now there's 5 or 6, and they're doing quite well. It's a new area, so it's hard but we're growing. As a result of this campaign, there's now a congregation in an area called the Wanaheda Church of Christ. That's a combination, Wanaheda, of 3 different tribes. And so that's what they call that little area, Wanaheda. And we have a short-term school there where we'll bring in people from throughout Namibia and give them 20 weeks of intensive training, send them up as vocational missionaries. Next. And that's the church building. The Northside Church where I'm at, we purchased that for them. And it's a house, and we turned it into a church building. It's right across the street from the high school, so it's really cool, the relationship we can have there with the high school. Next. This is in Malawi, and these are some of those that responded to the gospel of Christ. It was my privilege to be preaching that day when 16 responded to become Christians. So that shows that. Next. There's an evening service. It's one of the most touching things you'll see. You'll be out in the middle of nowhere in Africa, and you look on the hills, and here come the children. Because during the day, sometimes we'll show Bible cartoons for the children. And what a joy it is to introduce some of them to Jesus for the very first time and to see how they respond. And they'll come and they'll stay all day long. Now this is Africa, remember. And they'll come and they've walked miles and miles. They see that big red tent. They don't know what they're walking to, but they come. And then they'll stay all night. And if we go to 10 or 11 o'clock, they'll stay to 10, 11 o'clock along with the adults. And then when we leave, you see them walking out through the darkness back home. It's Africa's receptive to the gospel message. Next, please. In Malawi, I probably saw at least 100,000 bicycles. That's how they get around. Now, the men ride the bicycles. Unfortunately, the ladies do all the walking, and they'll carry these things on their head that are just incredible. You say, how in the world can they do that? But they'll ride their bicycles there. Next. That's Rhea Funk. That's George's wife, and she was on a campaign, and during the day they were doing a little vacation Bible school for the children in that area. Rhea is recovering from breast cancer and just had finished her radiation treatment. So please keep her in prayer because she's incredibly important to this work. But she, as you can see, we're working with the children. Next, please. That's one of our elders from Northside. He hates this picture. I can show it because he's not here. But this is in an area called Venda, and during the day we had done something with the children, teaching them about Jesus the King. And so that's Doug. He's a sweetheart. One of the things about Gospel Chariot, we are the overseeing congregation. And one of our elders will go over there every year to experience a different part of the work so that they can really be shepherds over it. Next, please. Here again, I'm just showing you what happens with the chariot. Next, please. That's George and myself in Malawi at the end of the campaign. While I was there, there were 127 baptisms under the tent. And as soon as I got home, I heard that there was a whole bunch more. And what's really cool is we'll work with the existing churches. People say, well, what do you do about follow-up? Well, 3 things. We've got them all enrolled in Bible correspondence courses. Number 2, we have short-term schools where we can bring people from those regions as needed into 20 weeks of intensive training. They'll go back as vocational missionaries. And number 3, we've been doing this long enough now that we're working with the churches of Christ in those countries, and they'll help decide where the chariot is going to go, what region is going to be evangelized, and they make the plans for the follow-up, and we work with them. And then the 4th thing is there's a program called Nations University, and it's an online college, and they can get their bachelor's or master's in Bible. And everywhere you go in Africa, there's 2 things you'll see. Number 1, every one of them have a cell phone. I promise you, it doesn't matter where you go. Now, in Africa, the cell phones, you don't have to pay for incoming calls, so even if they don't have any minutes on their phone, they can receive text and incoming calls. And so you'll see that everywhere. And out in the middle of nowhere, you get a strong signal. I mean, it's just way superior to ours. And then number 2, you'll see cyber cafes out where they'll be able to go in and use the internet so they can download their studies and go home and study it, come back, take the test, and send it. Next. That's another one of our elders. This was in the Port St. John region. We didn't have time to get the tent up. We hadn't had the tent up yet, but some young men came and wanted Bible studies. And so Joe, one of our elders, sat down and was studying the Bible with them. Next, please. Also, what we do when we're in those regions, we'll go out into the villages that are surrounding. There'll be villages on every hillside. We also go into big cities, but we'll go out and invite them under the tent, hand out correspondence courses, and do Bible studies. The guy in the blue shirt, that's one of the men I work with, Joel Lewis. And he's out with some guys heading out to meet and greet. Next, please. The chariot can be used for several things. It can be used for planting churches. It can be used to help churches evangelize. But also it can be used for benevolence. And as you can see, in this case, there was an area that had a big need, and so we loaded up the truck and took these food items. The big sacks are something called Millie Meal. When I was in Malawi, I had Millie Meal twice a day. And it takes a while to develop a taste for Millie Meal. It's kind of like grits. Anybody know what grits? Only really thick. And you can take it and put it in a ball and throw it against the wall. But they'll put a little meat sauce on it, and it's really not that, but that's a staple for them. Young people, they're lucky to have meat once a day. And so we are so blessed. God, is that right? Is it okay to say amen in here? I read it in the Bible. I know it's there. We are blessed. God is good. One of the things they say in Africa that I love, one of the trucks has this on the stage, on the curtain. It says, God is good. And so sometimes before they begin, they'll all say together, God is good all the time. All the time. God is good. And they know what it's like to pray, give us this day our daily bread, and really understand what that means. And yet they're so joyful. Man, when they become Christians, you can't imagine what it does for their life. Next, please. These are the ladies that were cooking the Millie Meal at that campaign. I thought you might enjoy us seeing that. Next, please. And there's the built-in baptistry. And it's a little tank, and the one baptizing just kneels beside them. They sit down, and we just lay them back. And both trucks carry that with them, of course, everywhere they go. Next, please. There's Brother George doing one of the baptisms. Their feet actually go under the wall into the living quarters where the evangelists stay. There's actually a bed on the other side of that, right on top of that. Next, please. One of the big things we do with World Bible School, with Gospel Charity, is we hand out Bible correspondence courses. That's my son Chad. He's the one that preaches in Hot Springs Village. And we're out in a city, and we just go out and invite them, hand out introductory lessons, encourage them to come back that night with a lesson. And then we set up more Bible studies with them, send their names to the states, and start the process. And so that day we probably handed out 10,000 courses. You know how many we found on the street afterwards? None. The printed page is very powerful there. Next. And there's some of the nationals helping us for when people show up with the World Bible School courses and One Nation Under God and other things that we use. Next, please. This is in Pretoria. This is one of the big cities. It's the fall capital. No, the spring capital of the South African government. And also there's all kinds of universities there, so they come from all over Africa to go to college there. And George went in with a tent and started a congregation, and I preached there a few months ago, and there's about 300 there now. And so that's our book room on one of the major streets in Pretoria, a very important city. And we do this in quite a few other places. And there's a book room, and then in the back there's a place for our short-term school, and then also a congregation meets there. That congregation, about 300, have no paid evangelists. But several of the men work with us in the chariot and have gone through our training school. And here's what's really neat is that most of them are college students, and so they're going to be the doctors and the lawyers and the teachers and the professionals and influence leaders in their country, not just South Africa, because they're there from all over Africa. And when they graduate school, they'll go back home and they take the gospel with them. And we have lots of experience with that happening. Next, please. I want to illustrate, this is Plattenberg Bay where George lives. Now, he lived in Johannesburg, and not that the work's done there, but we have a lot of congregations. We've got a downtown congregation. Lots of congregations have been planted there. And so George looked at a map and found a region where there were several hundred kilometers where there were no churches of Christ. And so he moved his family there. It's a little safer for Rhea because he's gone so much, and she's at home handling the administration stuff. And so they went in with a chariot, baptized these folks, and there's more actually, and then rented this little place they called a shack. That's their word, not mine. And it really was. When it rained, it was like a flood coming through. So eventually they had to do something else, but the church kept growing and growing and growing. And also they were evangelizing up and down the east coast of that area. And so next. That's now where they assemble. And you've never heard singing till you hear them sing in that building. It's concrete, and they made most of it themselves. And called the Hillview Church of Christ. And that little congregation, with the help of George, is evangelizing their region. I mean, it's just incredible the work that they're doing next. And one of the things, this is back to the most recent trip. I just returned from Malawi. And so the truck was driving to another region, but they stopped right here. And there's a little congregation. You can see the church building back there with no roof. And so we put the side of the truck down and we preached for a while. And we did out Bible correspondence courses. The congregation had asked us to stop there. And I asked them, I said, when did you start meeting here, and when were you established? And they said, about 3 years ago when the chariot was coming through. And it just excited me because I thought I knew about the chariot, but then I really had a vision for it. And I said, well, how did you build that building? Because Malawi is the third poorest country, at least in the sub-Sahara in Africa. And they said, well, our members have sacrificed. And they make the bricks, and there's no roof, but inside, if you go inside, next slide, please. You'll see there's a thatched roof because they had a little pavilion built where they were assembling, and they just built the building around that. So until they can afford a roof, which is underway actually, they have the little thatched roof over them. And George, I was just carrying on about this to George because George was with me, Brother Funk, and I said, George, this is so great to see. He said, Mike, this is happening in 11 African countries as we speak. And I begin to see the impact that the gospel chariot work is having with the gospel of Christ throughout Africa. Next, please. This is probably, though, my favorite moment ever in Africa. We were in Port St. John. We were driving to Lusiki. We looked, a congregation we had established, and they had built a little building, and we were going there to help do some affirmation and confirming. And we saw a high school kind of up in the hills or mountains. And so we went in and asked them, can we come in and hand out World Bible School courses and Bibles? And somebody had donated erasers. And so we said, we have a lot of erasers. And so the principal said, sure. So we figured, we would, meet them after our class or something, or they would take all the stuff and hand it out. Because we've learned, you convert the teachers, you convert the influence leaders there. And so we were going to give Bibles to the teachers and ask them to distribute the other stuff to the children. And so instead, he went around from classroom to classroom and had them bring their chairs out, set them in this big open courtyard, looked at George and myself and said, now preach to us. And we did. And then, some of them came onto the tent, and there were some conversions as a result of it, and just down the road. And then they sang a song for me. And I don't know what they sang because I didn't understand. Although they spoke English, they sang it in their national language, their tribal language, and it was heavenly. And I'll never forget that moment. And how long ago has it been since, the governor of Texas, not trying to be political, please, I'm not a political person, is getting in trouble for getting people together to pray. And they're letting George and I preach to these high schoolers, hand out Bibles and correspondence courses. And Africa is receptive, brothers. Sisters, Africa is receptive. And the time has come. And so we have a tool that will help us impact a large portion of the whole continent of Africa. And that's why we're trying to build this third chariot. Next, please. I think that's the last one. Okay, please just go ahead and put that away and put in the, I have a DVD from George, and he's going to talk about the next stage of what we're trying to do so that we can go up the west coast of Africa up to the north. And what we'll do is George will go in there and he'll find some churches that are mature and have elders, and we'll work with them because he wants us to be completers, not competers. And so the chariot then, in summary, number one, we do big city evangelism with our book rooms and our short-term schools. We do short-term school training to help train nationals, young men and young ladies. Okay, let's go ahead. Okay, go back to the front if you can. Yeah, I know. I think I did something silly. Okay, let me try it here. Let's just take it out and put it back in there. Sorry, folks, I'm not Mr. High Tech. I may have set this up wrong. What's scary is I'm the one with the most technological knowledge at our congregation among all the staff. Sorry for the delay. Yeah.
Namibia, South Africa,
Okay.
Swaziland, and Lesotho. And to date, we have baptized.
There we go. It'll start now.
Hi there, I hope this finds you doing well. It's me, George Funk from South Africa. And we have some great news. We want to tell you that we're in the process of making plans to build a new gospel chariot. This is exciting. As you know, we have two gospel chariots traveling into the southern part of Africa, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Malawi, Namibia, South Africa, Swaziland, and Lesotho. And today we have baptized over 12,000 souls and planted hundreds of churches of Christ in the southern part of Africa in conjunction with churches of Christ in Africa. But brethren, we have great news to build a third gospel chariot for North Africa, meaning that we'll be able to reach the entire continent of Africa. Almost 1 billion people. Africa is receptive, brethren. This is exciting. We have been praying about this day for many years now, and we have made a decision to build a third gospel chariot reaching Africa. You have helped us and blessed us to reach the southern part, and now the time has come for this entire continent. Brethren, we plead with you to help us build this chariot. It's going to take $150,000 to build this gospel chariot. It might take 1 year to raise the funds, 2 years or 3 years. But we believe we need to take that step. And we're pleading with you. You know, a gospel chariot is really just a treasure truck on wheels. It's a World Bible School on wheels. It's a vehicle that travels into different countries having gospel meetings. And as it comes into a village, a town, a city, people will come over and it's divided into three. The middle section will open out, and as the middle section opens out, it's got a baptistry full of water. It's got a 300-seater tent, it's got chairs, it's got a sleeping quarters for the evangelists, a little kitchenette, and every day there's gospel meeting after gospel meeting. And a gospel chariot can be used for different reasons. It can be used for gospel seeking and saving the lost. But it can also be used for church planting. And this is what happens a lot in Africa. They love planting churches of Christ. And there's many cities and villages and towns where there are no churches of Christ. And before we get there, they'll plan as the brethren in Africa. And they'll put a gospel chariot in an area where there's no church. And for a week, the gospel will be preached. And 5 or 10 or 15 people will be saved. And then we pull the gospel chariot away, and there the Lord's church is. And so it can be used for church planting. We use it for the strengthening of newly planted churches. We also use it for medical missions. We use it for the outreach and leadership training. But brethren, there's a continent that is hurting, and gospel chariot mission is making an impact. And you have helped us do this. Now we want to build that chariot for North Africa. This is exciting. The Bible says the love of Christ compels us. We just feel we have to because it's such a successful word. We know that Jesus, when Jesus came, he said, "Follow me and I'll make you fishers of men." In the middle of Jesus' life, the Bible says that the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. And at the end, he says, "Therefore go make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost." And so we see, brethren, that Jesus is saying, "Go." And we want to reach this continent. You know, it's an exciting continent. Africa is exciting. It really and truly is. And the time has come for Africa to evangelize Africa. We believe in a gospel chariot as the dream. Africa has the team. We don't need missionaries. And so we want to empower Africa to evangelize their own continent. Please help us. We're trying to raise $150,000 this year. Please help us with the one. If you can help, please send it to our constant church in Benton office, the North Side Church of God, Benton office, Field office, 51 Benton office. Thank you for helping us, help them who don't know you, help us to take advantage of the continent that is really true. So George Christ, your brother in Christ, we Christians, because of you, and we thank you so much.
We can go ahead and turn everything off. I believe in this work. I don't have to be doing this. I believe in it. And I've never been a part of something that every year God was working with and enabling hundreds of thousands of people to hear the gospel under the tent or through the correspondence courses. And every year, nearly every year, 1,000 or more being baptized. When we talk about 1,000, we're talking about those who are baptized under the chariot, not those who are baptized out in those congregations that we've established. God gets all the glory, because without Him, we're nothing. But we give you and brethren and sisters like you the appreciation and the thanks. And we're asking, please continue, Brother Steve, what you're doing. If there can be a one-time, if somebody individually could help us get this third chariot up and running, and it will impact hundreds of thousands of people with the gospel. And we won't just dip them and drop them. We work seriously at the follow-up. And so I've been doing this now for 11 years. I was working with Truth for Today World Mission School. I was assistant director. I'd moved from Rolla, Missouri, where I was the pulpit preacher at the Highway E congregation in Rolla, Missouri. I was invited to move to Searcy. My son was going to school there, so it really worked out well, plus the opportunity I was going to have. It's a print ministry. And I was assigned a project called Becoming a Faithful Christian in Africa. And my responsibility is to find a Bible publisher and get them to let us print a New Testament for free, which we accomplished. And then to have chapters from things we'd written, from other things, and do questions at the end, and do charts and Bible study aids, and do a marked study through the New Testament. and then make it available for missionaries in Africa. But I was having trouble finding any missionaries to receive it because it's very difficult to get stuff through customs. We still print Bibles and things, but now we print them in country. I mean, it's a really big part of what we do. And so somebody, a man I knew, I'd met him actually in Antigua. He used to be a missionary there. Now he was in South Africa doing a school of sorts. And he said, call George Funk. He's doing World Bible School follow-up. He's going into 2 or 3 countries. And so I called George and I explained to him what the tool was. I said, I have New Testaments and it's got helps and things. I said, would you like some? He said, yeah. Now this is George. This is genuine, folks. I've been doing this for a lot of years now. I said, how many would you like? Now this is what he said to me. Give me 1 million. I said, I printed 150,000. I'll give you 50,000. He said, well, how are you going to get them here? I said, well, with one of those big containers. He said, can I have the container? And I said, why? I'm just renting it. He said, well, because I plant churches and I just planted one and they don't have a place to meet. And I'll turn it into a church building for them. And he did. And he did. And so when I moved back into full-time local work, I brought my respect for the work in Africa. I'd been over there several times to the congregation. And so we've been working with George for a long time, and we've seen it. And this is real. It's the real thing. And I appreciate and love all the good works that are being done throughout Africa and throughout the world. But as I said, you brothers and sisters are a part of a work here that is different than anything else that you've probably ever seen. I was in George's living room and he said, Mike, I want to show you something. And I said, okay. And he sketched out the gospel chariot. He said, what do you think about that? I said, I think that is incredible. And he said, well, I'm going to try to do this, but I have to have somebody that'll help me. And I need materials and Bibles and running cost. And he said, if you'll promise to help me, I will try to get this done with God's help. And so I made a commitment. And that's why I'm on the road right now, is our elders believe in it and they free me up to go do this. I have lots to do back home when I get home every time. It's been a tough year for the Napiers. A tough couple of years. My wife had colon cancer over the last couple of years and had to have surgery and all the chemo, and probably there's others here that have been through that. Had both my knees replaced. And I know, don't you feel so sad for me? I mean, I'm telling a sad story of woe. But, you know, I tell it to make a point, and I will in just a moment. But when we first went to the doctor, my wife had diabetes, and she just couldn't get to feeling good. And so we thought that's what it was. The doctor said, let's just do a colonoscopy. I don't think there's anything there. So we went, we had the colonoscopy. The doctor came out, and he had this look on his face, and I knew I wasn't going to like what he had to say. He said, Mrs. Napier, Mr. Napier, I've done thousands of these. We have to send this off, but I can promise you your wife has colon cancer, and it's really bad, and we have to do something, and we have to do it now. And so he said, I'll let you all talk, and then we'll talk about arrangements. And so he left the room, and Diane's still a little groggy, and I'm being myself, Mr., okay, Diane, no, it's going to be okay because, I'm in hospitals all the time with my work, and I'll find out the very best doctors, the very best nurses, the very best surgeons, the very best chemotherapists. I mean, it's going to be okay. I'm telling you, and I know, and it's probably going to cost something. Don't worry, we're Dave Ramsey people. Some of you know who that is. We have our debts paid off. Our house is almost paid off. We can, we're going to. It's going to be okay. She said, Mike, no, listen. I said, no, Diane, it's going to be. She said, I know it'll be okay. I said, that's what I'm trying to tell you. It'll be okay. She said. And she gave me the look. Men, you know what that is. They're born with the ability to do that. I have a little granddaughter, And the other day I was carrying on silly and she just gave me the look. I can't do it, you know. But I can be at a potluck at church and I can be being my silly self, and Diane will give me the look across the crowded room in the back of my neck, and I can feel it. And I know. She's saying, be quiet. So she gives me a look. She says, be quiet. Now, she didn't say that. I said, okay, what's the matter, hon? She said, I want you to listen to what I have to say. I said, yes, ma'am. What have you preached your whole life? We've been married since I was 18 and you were 19. And why are you going all over Africa and India and all these places, all these foreign countries, and why are you out on the road for this gospel chariot? What message are you giving these people? So you know that. She said, here's what I'm telling you, and I want you to listen. Don't say anything. It'll be okay. No, you're not hearing me. Whether they can treat this or whether they can't, it'll be okay. We're in a hurting world. In this city, there's places, there's people that are like David in that dark, damp cave of Adullam that look on their left and they say, behold, no man cares for my soul. They don't know how they're going to make it. There's children that the only time they ever hear the name of God is in vain. There's broken homes. They need to know that in Christ, it'll be okay. In the great continent of Africa, they're hurting. And we have a message, a story that they will respond to. We just need help getting the story to them. And we're able to say to a country where 40 to 50% of the population has the HIV virus. Tuberculosis is running wild. Starvation is common. Where if they had money for a doctor, they couldn't get to him because they live too far away. To where literally every day is a struggle for survival. People say, well, why are they so much more receptive? I've just explained it to you. And now's the time to get them the good news. And the gospel, folks, really is good news. Thank you for what you're doing in this community. Thank you for what you're doing in helping the chariot through 11 countries on our way to 17 or 18 countries, Lord willing, to tell them the good news. We are unapologetically an evangelistic work. We pull our chariot up to hospitals that our brethren run, and we go to orphans' homes and all kinds of good, and we're for all of that. But our role is to tell the good news. And Africa will respond. Please help us. And if you're here and you're having struggles, and I suspect you are, I think you could send out 25 postcards randomly into your community and say, praying for you in your time of struggle, and most of them would say, wow, that's great, wonder how they knew. Everybody's got struggles. This is a wonderful world, but we are removed from the tree of life. Right? But if you're here and you're in those struggles, I want you to know, if you're in Jesus, it'll be okay. And if you're not, walk, run, don't walk. To talk to somebody about being buried with Christ. because He'll raise you to walk in newness of life. Please pray for us. God bless you. Thank you so much.